It's noon in Madrid now. This is Madrid platform, and we are going to go for our second session. We are going to have a seminar on renewable energies, and we have a speaker and moderator, Carlos Ballesteros, who is Director General of ANESE, a Spanish company for energy services. And then in the next roundtable, we are going to talk about changes in business models in this sector. We will talk about shared self-consumption, aggregation of demand. I'm sorry, but I have to keep social distances. But in any case, I would like to introduce you to Carlos Ballesteros, Director General of ANESE, Pablo Álvarez, Manager of Energy Services of Acciona, David Rodríguez, Operation Manager of Schneider Electric, and Miguel Fandillo, Managing Director of Energías. And you can follow us on social networks too. Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction. Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to be with you. I would like to start by thanking Carlos Morales from Madrid platform for the opportunity to celebrate this seminar on renewable energies. A year and a half ago, during the COP25, we met and Carlos talked about what Madrid platform would look like. The pandemic halted the idea of Madrid platform, but here we are. We have a great environment, and let's hope we have many editions of Madrid platform in the future. ANESE is the Spanish Association of Energy Services, and today we will talk about energy management, about the energy world, and then we will talk about energy policies. All this is embedded in the Energy Services Association. There is direct dialogue between all these companies of the energy sector. So without further ado, let's go for the first roundtable. We will talk about renewable energy and about new business models. I won't introduce yourselves. I won't introduce you, sorry, because you've already been introduced. And then by order, Pablo, David, and Miguel can answer. Which is the role of renewable energies in this change? The energy transition more specifically. Let me take my mask off to reply. Well, within Acciona, we are a leading company in the sector of renewable energies. We played a pioneering role in Spain, and I think that our role is absolutely critical. Within Acciona, I deal with energy services from the meter downstream and not upstream. In the coming 15 years, the idea is that all energy generation will be 100% renewable. And from the meter downstream, we think that photovoltaic energy, distributed energy, is going to play a critical role in decarbonization strategies. And we are also carrying out many innovative pilot projects. Hydrogen projects, flexible projects in the energy field, and we all know that renewable energies play an absolutely essential role. Thank you. Thank you. David? Good afternoon to you all. I would like to start by thanking you for having invited me. And we at Schneider Electric think that sustainability is key. Considering the pandemic, we see that awareness has been raised in terms of sustainability. Countries, whole continents have decided to establish ambitious goals in terms of sustainability, and therefore new laws have been developed, such as the law for energy transition. And renewable energies play a leading role in sustainability. We have to think in such terms, above the meter and behind the meter. But everything adds up. We are very ambitious. Things are moving at a very high speed, and therefore we need new formulas in order to include renewable energies in our daily life, in the generation field. David, what's your viewpoint from the industry? Well, I would like to start by thanking Anese and Madrid Platform for having invited me to participate. We are going through an environmental emergency, and we have to decarbonize economy and society as a whole. We at Energía is a medium-sized company, and our goal is to go hand in hand with SMEs in order to apply decarbonization strategies. In the last 10-15 years, many strategies have been developed in terms of costs and development, and the technology that we have nowadays is reliable and competitive as well. Because let's not forget that SMEs account for 90% of the companies in our country, and SMEs have to apply decarbonization, but in a competitive manner. And therefore, renewable energies have to be applied. And we can make investments and have acceptable return. At Energía, we are specialized in distributed energy, that is consumption, self-consumption, energy efficiency, which are topics that will be dealt with in the next roundtable. We are in an event to do business between Europe and Latin America, and therefore everything we talk about here will have repercussions in other countries in Latin America. Therefore, we have to talk about self-consumption as well when we talk about renewable energies. So, according to your experience, is self-consumption a reality nowadays? Let me take off my mask again. Yes, self-consumption is a reality nowadays. But we have to keep in mind that there is a lot to do. There's a lot to do, both here and in Latin America. In Mexico, we are developing self-consumption projects both in the industry and in the public sector. In the industry sector, we are implementing big self-consumption projects, and the cost of panels and technology have been exponentially decreased, and therefore you can get a return on the short term. So we are talking about reasonable projects with a risk that can be taken on for 5-10 years. And the business can be further developed in Spain and in Latin America. There are many opportunities, and we are working on self-consumption projects, on demand management. So my answer is that self-consumption is a reality. David? Yes, it's true that we reflect ourselves on different markets and countries. We have to have a look around at what things look like, what technology is like in other continents and countries. We have had regulatory issues in Spain in the last few years, but everybody's talking about self-consumption right now. It's a reality because it's profitable in the case of countries that have a lot of sunshine. You can get a good return on investment on a short-term basis. But another important aspect that we have to keep in mind in Spain is shared self-consumption, which is a way of providing access to those people who do not have access to certain technology. So shared self-consumption is present, but it has not been developed as it should have yet, mainly because there is a lot of room for improvement. We have to consider the evolution curve, and there will be more and more self-consumption in the future. Technically speaking, we are not talking about very complex solutions, but we will need technological platforms in order to manage self-consumption appropriately. And the energy community will have to implement more technology. In the end, there will be a paradigm shift very quickly. And therefore, at Schneider Electric, we want to be technology provider to support all companies so that companies can implement these new complex mechanisms, which are new. And we wish to provide new platforms for energy provision. I think shared self-consumption has to be further regulated, but in any case, we are talking about small pending issues that have to be solved. But shared self-consumption will be the basis, the most simple formula to have a local energy community. But everything will start from energy self-consumption. Self-consumption. Shall we talk about self-consumption and then about the rest of the topics? Yes, okay. Well, we think that self-consumption plays a strategic role for the country and for the industry, because we are going towards an energy model which is different. The energy mix is evolving towards 100% renewable energy in the coming decades, but we have to think about how things will take place. We have to take advantage of local resources. So we have millions of square meters of roofs that we can use in Spain in order to generate energy where it is going to be consumed in order to avoid losses in the distribution chain. And as you said before, there has been a technology improvement in the last 10 years, and therefore the return on investment is quite interesting for SMEs. Considering the current situation, it might be difficult to make such investments, but companies such as Acciona and Energía can invest now and get savings. And then there is another thing that has to be kept in mind. We think that self-consumption is the beginning of decarbonization at SMEs, because big companies already have teams that have set objectives and that are working to achieve them. But at SMEs, things are more difficult. There is usually nobody in charge of the energy aspect, but photovoltaic energy allows us to establish goals, and therefore it's a milestone so that Spanish SMEs or Latin American SMEs can start to establish more ambitious goals in other projects that are going to provide a lot of savings, such as in the case of management of demand. We should remember that in Latin America, they are listening to us too right now. So we should think about international SMEs as well. As David said, we had this royal decree on self-consumption that gave the sector the opportunity to begin thinking about self-consumption, and then now we are thinking about energy communities and considering people that are listening to us abroad. What is a local energy community? What agents and what requirements are needed? We are not only talking about photovoltaic self-consumption. We are going to a higher level. How can these local energy communities contribute to decarbonization?
And shared self-consumption, and I'm going to give an example, a practical example of shared consumption, self-consumption. In Acciona, in my company, when we talk about shared self-supply, we want to reach maximum efficiency and have, in other words, the lowest consumption. There's a best management of the demand and so forth. That's in terms of consumption. And then we have generation and self-supply. In municipalities and individual homes and so forth. And thanks to the royal decree, this shared self-supply is basically, if you're in a, can generate in different areas where you have the best, maybe rooftops to put the solar panels and so forth. In cities, in town halls, they're doing collaborations, public-private collaborations, where there is generation in public buildings, maybe schools, and the excess and where the excess then is distributed. So in public-private collaborations, we're trying to generate on public spaces and have excesses that are not lose any excesses. And according to certain time slots, who that energy belongs to, but no energy should be lost. That excess energy should shared out. In Barcelona, for example, it could be they have a program where it's sent to hospitals, for example. The local energy communities goes a little bit past that. There's still a lot to do there. We have a pilot project, and basically what that is, it's a point of different generation points. Could be self-supply, cars, could be many different self-supply points and different consumers with different time slots. And the basic idea here is to be as efficient as possible. There's the least amount of excess energy lost, that so consumers can change the hours where they produce and consume energy, so at the end there's a balance with the greatest efficiency with what is generated and what is consumed. That's basically what we're trying to do. And the energy communities, these local communities, there are very few in Spain. So there's still a lot to do, but that's going to be big in the future, and we're focusing on that for looking toward the future. Pablo and David, I'm sure that you have some things to say here. I think that Pablo defined this very well. The energy community has to be thought of in the broadest sense. It's a community, an energy community. It could be an industrial park, it could be a town, it could be a small city. And in terms of generation, not just solar energy, it could be cogeneration, wind farms, gas, storage. So we're very used to here talking about the lithium batteries, but there's a lot of storage, a lot of different technologies. It could be thermal storage. So we have the issue of storage, and then we have consumption. Those are the three pillars in consumption, critical time slots, and we have to think about energy community as an entity or a community, that how it deals with all of these different variables. So here the challenge is a technological one, as you said. It all comes from digitalization. All of these processes need to be digitalized, and part of the artificial intelligence also, they can provide the system within the best operation in terms of energy and environment. So we have to develop that technological project, and obviously we have to start with pilot projects because the regulations aren't mature yet, and the best way to be able to organize this is through a pilot test, so that we can understand what our needs really are. We, at Schneider Electric, we foster microgrids. This is used very frequently, this term microgrid. A microgrid could be individual, it could be a campus, it could be an industrial park, it could be a smart city. The important thing is the concept. We have to provide this system with this versatility so that it can work with all of these different distributed elements in generation, storage, and consumption in the best way possible. Thinking about the future, we're using energy now as an asset to operate, but maybe in the future we'll operate based on energy. So if there are lower prices and so forth, look what happened in the United States with the pipeline, the cutting of the blocking of the pipeline. So we can adjust operations to energy availability, possibly. Right now we take energy as a necessary evil, something that's needed. But maybe in the future we can change the way we do things and mold operations to energy availability. So I think this is just the beginning of a long-term project. Yes, beginning with self-supply, shared self-supply. That's the first stage of when we talk about these energy communities. That's already included in the European directive, these communities, but it needs to be implemented into our legislation. But what we have implemented already, at least in part, because there's a lot of administrative barriers, especially in the relationship between the commercial part and the distribution, is this shared self-supply. That's why we think shared self-supply is interesting in the SME sector. In Spain, to be able to do shared self-supply, it has to be low tension or using the same low voltage, and then it also has to be within 500 meters or using the same transformer. Remember that the tariff of the SMEs in Spain, the 3.0 in low voltage, are tariffs which are much higher than the medium voltage. We're paying tolls that are much higher than the medium voltage. So it's very important that this shared self-supply for the SMEs, so we're talking about an SME on low voltage, maybe it just has one shift from 8 to 6, and in the weekend probably doesn't consume because maybe they close on Friday. Therefore, we have one type of consumer that consumes during the sunlight hours, but the weekends generally doesn't consume. Therefore, the capacity to share those excesses, as we talked about before, with a restaurant that is close by, that opens on the weekend, with an under-industry that opens on the weekend, remembering that these are higher electricity prices. One, it could take us to very high levels of self-supply for an SME. 70% of it would be consumed by the SME itself because it's not going to only redimension if those excesses can be shared or sold to local businesses. So from an economic point of view, these are very competitive projects with a smaller return on investment, and they also foster the participation of all of these agents in an industrial park, for example, which we think is very important. Energía, about a year ago, did its first pilot project of industrial self-supply in an industrial park. Right now, we're executing all of these installations, and we're seeing how other SMEs in the industrial park are saying, oh, this is interesting for us as well, because there's 4 workshops here, 4 SMEs on this corner, each one with different time slots, and we would like to share energy. So this now is possible. But we need the administration to be more agile in being able to legalize these. And talking about the dynamic coefficients right now, everything is static. It's all in terms of percentages of the energy produced. I can't select when I assign that energy to the restaurant on the corner that works on the weekend or the workshop on the other corner. So that's basic and fundamental to publish this order. They regulate these dynamic, the dynamic part, and there's formula signed contracts between industrialists. It's nothing. It's not easy at all. This requires external companies like ourselves that act as an aggregator or an operator to help to implement those projects, help to finance those projects, and work in the daily administration of the projects. So we see this as this shared self-supply is a way to reduce risk. If a company, if a workshop closes, that energy can be then shared with its neighbors. So in Energética, we're working on a business model where the customer risk can be reduced as much as possible, because you don't have just one customer, but many customers close by. For us, this is very important to be able to finance any type of project in an industrial park. Thanks, Miguel. We've taken up the time by just one last round of questions. And the debate, we could be talking, we could go on and on talking. And it's clear that the decentralization here, we're talking about how we're changing the concept of distribution and the consumer. And technology moves forward faster than regulation. And just 1 minute each, we have this concept of demand. Maybe David wants to talk about that. Maybe that's the last level that we're talking about now, and the role of the energy companies, energy services companies in this. The difference between a local energy community and self-supply and an energy company, where it can be the producers and the consumer. Then it could be several different consumers, but an energy community, we need a non-profit association, but the consumer has to be within the cooperative. That's one of the major things. And in terms of energy companies, as my colleague said, we are the ideal entity to be this unifier between generation and consumers. And I think that we have to play a very important role in the future of that ecological transition in this sector. David, just very, very quickly, please. I completely support, I'm not going to report what Pablo just said, because I completely agree in the role of the companies. And in terms of flexibility at the end, that's another step that we talked about. When people control their consumption and they're empowered, then we have the companies, and when the market is flexible, to be able to operate. So the flexibility has to be seen as a mechanism to help the electrical system in the quality of its supply and storage and distributed elements. Today, it's the main consumers or players with distributed energy. But now it's going to be many small consumers. And the ISAs, the companies, need to be focused on these customers to be able to develop these business models and allow for flexibility. Just a few words, Miguel. In line with what you've said, we have a big challenge ahead of us, huge challenge. An important part of that challenge will be working with the industrial parks, which are mostly SMEs, and develop business models that allow to group together all of these SMEs around a project. It's not easy. Here, the role of the administration is very important to align all of these companies in the industrial parks, and the role of the companies is very important to do this. A lot of SMEs are in a complicated situation, so the company can develop that project, align, and put all of the different industrialists in agreement. We think that is of basic importance, because we're going to, if not, it would take much longer to reach that objective, the decarbonization by 2050. Thank you very much, Pablo, David, and Miguel. It's been a pleasure to share this conference with you. We're going to have to stop there. And then in the next talk, we're talking about the second part. In other words, behind the meter. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. We're going to see you just about in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Let's continue with the second roundtable. During the first roundtable, we talked about the renewable energies and new business models, and now we are going to talk about digitalization management, things that are changing the world, and energy companies can benefit from the change. I'll introduce the participants, and here we have Íñigo Beltrán. Íñigo, welcome. Juan Carlos Caballero, responsible for innovation and Internet of Things, and Daniel Ortega from Iberia, Israel. Welcome. So, the role of digitalization in the energy sector. We know it is absolutely key for decarbonization, but we would like you to explain us firsthand the role of Internet of Things, of the different solutions to decarbonize sectors. Third sector, industrial sector. These sectors that are emitting a lot of CO2. Well, thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to spend some time with you and share the expectations of the sector. Digitalization, as you mentioned, will be a key tool for energy efficiency and sustainability. The key reason is that if you cannot measure things, you cannot save anything, and digitalization has been allowing us for a long time to have the possibility to make measurements and to analyze vectors where nothing could be measured in the past due to the lack of technology or to cost issues or to the impossibility to implement certain projects. And therefore, the energy sector is benefiting a lot from digitalization, and we have to continue promoting these initiatives in all fields where energy consumption has played a leading role in the past, especially in the industry sector. But as we will see, there are other fields in which we can improve the situation a lot. The economy as a whole has a great opportunity in the coming years. Carlos. I would like to thank the organizers of this event, and I think we are all embracing this technology in order to reduce costs and reduce the carbon footprint. But for energy efficiency, we need tools. Digitalization is key, and digitization is key. Having the possibility to monitor teams through platforms. All this allows us to improve efficiency and to know how our industry works, how our hotels work, how our SMEs work. We have to escalate consumption, modify the way we consume energy, and be more efficient. But decarbonization processes are electrifying the economy as well. In the past, we had a different situation. Our consumption was different, as Íñigo said. We have electric cars right now, self-supply, that are possible thanks to technology. We need to be efficient. We need to reduce our consumption and limit our carbon footprint to the minimum and then apply renewable solutions. We've been working on this for 11 years now at our company, ECOMT. We have 25,000 teams connected to our platform in order to improve efficiency and reduce the carbon footprint. Thank you, Carlos. Israel, your turn. I fully agree with the rest of the participants of this roundtable. But considering this first question, I think we have to have a clear goal. I'm an engineer, an industrial engineer, and I love data. And data are absolutely key, but technology has come to stay. It's a tool we have to use, but we have to have clear objectives in mind. If the objective is decarbonization, we have to establish the steps that we have to take in order to achieve such objectives, considering the European framework and the Spanish framework. We know we are going to get next generation funds. Without those funds, we wouldn't be able to imagine or to think about the transformation we want to carry out through renewable energies. And I think we have to highlight another concept. I really like to keep in mind the process in order to include electricity, considering the goal of decarbonization. 15 years ago, there was a boom in thermal energy. We had leading companies such as Isophoton. Where is Isophoton now? Thermal solar energy. Where is it now? We have to do things right. And for that, we need a strategy. Well, you went 2 or 3 steps ahead, Israel. This is good food for thought for our debate. We have the European Green Deal. Energy efficiency is a milestone. And then we have to think about how to use renewable energy to decarbonize. And technology plays a key role, as we all know. What technology can we use? What technology is key in order to get energy savings? What technologies should we use? The EFE group has a global strategy. We have to be technology neutral and see the circumstances in each company in order to achieve the goal of decarbonization. But as previous speaker said, we need competitiveness. It's all right to be renewable, to apply technology. It's necessary, of course, but in the end, companies have to absorb costs. And for that, we need to analyze the situation properly, because some technologies are very promising, but are not profitable right now. And companies cannot apply certain technologies right now because we are in a crisis situation. Therefore, I think that we have to provide appropriate information regarding transformation, energy transformation, and keep in mind which technology can be applied now and which technology will be applied in 5 or 10 years' time. I'm talking about the storage through batteries, solar, thermal technology might be useful in the future, and then hydrogen, which is a vector and not a technology, and then we have mobility, biomethane. There are many technologies. In some cases, these technologies are profitable and others are not. Sometimes they are cost-effective and others are not. Hydrogen is going to play an important role. But many industries say, well, this is not going to be useful to solve all my problems. It only solves 4% of our problems. So there are many solutions we have to keep in mind. We have to be open-minded and objective in order to see which solutions will work in each context. Juan Carlos. I share Íñigo's viewpoint. We have to be technology neutral, so to say. Some technologies will be better in some cases and others will be worse. In the context of digitization and digitalization, we will need to make good use of all data, and we will need to make good use of our management platforms, because platforms will allow us to interact with our teams and get information in order to devise a long-term strategy to apply measures, systems for continued improvement and renewable energy so that we can be efficient. We have to be able to manage things properly, considering different parameters and the different devices that are connected to the platforms. When we talk about savings, this is a complex concept. It depends on where you're saving. We have to consider KPIs, ratios, in order to see our savings objectively. We need to get renewable energy and to use renewable energy, but we also need to be efficient. Hotels probably need to spend less energy on each guest, for example. Israel. I fully agree with Íñigo, absolutely. I think we have to talk about technologies in plural. There's not only one technology. Technologies have to be used for decarbonization. This is the key objective. We have to consider the Sustainable Development Goals as well, and we need to use renewable energies and technology. But strategy is key, as I mentioned before. We've been talking about smart cities for a long time. For me, smart city is a city that uses resources well in order to get the highest profit possible. Technology helps for that. But when I think about the concept of a smart city, I think about a small village using forest biomass. I think about Helsinki, where we have premises and 4 networks use water in order to provide heating and hot water to their communities. When we talk about other types of energy, I think about low enthalpy geothermal energy and solar thermal energy. And we have to keep in mind that there are different models that have to coexist. Therefore, I think there is not only one technology, so depending each objective, We have to look for the best solution and apply the best technology. We have to think long term. We have an opportunity to change our cities and transform our world for the next 20, 30, 40 years. We do not have to change everything for the coming 2 years, but for the coming 20 or 30 years. Considering that many people are listening to us through streaming, especially many companies in Latin America, I think we should keep in mind that we should also talk about other energy efficiency measures. So I would like you to think about energy rehabilitation, energy reuse. Some sectors have applied the concept of decarbonization better than others. Reuse of energy, I think we have a very good opportunity. Then there will be a third roundtable to talk about energy policies and see how we want to use the funds we will get. What technologies can we apply now, considering your experience? Energy reuse is probably a sector where there is a lot to do. Not many initiatives have been applied. Energy rehabilitation is a concept, a complex concept. So I think that the technology to date didn't allow us to make appropriate and good proposals for the owners. There are other countries in Northern Europe that use heating more than us, but in Spain, for example, we use more air conditioning for more months. So we also have opportunities here in Spain, and digitalization will allow us to handle a very high volume of data with many variables, making use of many square meters, and therefore we have to find a hybrid model in order to be more efficient. It's the only way to cater for the demand and change the sector. We need to think about renewable energies and about energy efficiency in order to solve the whole problem. And I also think that some companies are devising good solutions. Technologies have to be transformed into services that customers can understand easily and apply easily. For example, I cannot tell a customer, you have to leave the building for 2 years so that I can apply this technology and then you will be more cost efficient. No. You cannot be very invasive with technology. You have to see transformation soon, and I think we have the right technology. And in our company, we are working with different companies. We have different collaboration programs, and I believe that in the next few years, there will be a profound change in the sector. Many clients and customers are asking us for new solutions. As you know, sometimes you absolutely need to comply with some regulations. Otherwise, you cannot compete in the market. And this is a threat for many companies. Either you are more energy efficient or you will be left out.
I completely agree with what Inigo said, and I also share that there has to be a mixture between efficiency and renewable energies in this part. We have to address this. And now that we're sharing this with Latin America, I'm going to talk about hotels and restaurants. The pandemic has affected all of us in Spain and the rest of the world, what we can and cannot do. There's a huge array of possibilities from generation, thermal generation, electrical energy generation, but I would like to focus on the automation and awareness raising of staff, because buildings are used by people, and we can have a high degree of automation and lighting systems that are very efficient. When we have light outside, they're down the maximum and minimum temperatures and so forth. And also, if on the roof we have photovoltaic panels, but we have to raise awareness of this society on how to improve energy consumption, show the carbon footprint we're leaving, and how we're making this contribution to sustainability. Now the companies see the impact that they're having. They're improving. In my home, I don't believe that it's going to make any difference so awareness raising is really vital, is real. Completely agree with everything that's been said on Juan Carlos and Inigo. I would like to stress what you said about the old homes focusing in the residential sector. Residential sector has an impact on almost 40% of the consumption of energy, buildings in general. And in that context, the ministry says that there's almost 22 million homes that are older, they're built before 1980, with the old standards. In other words, we're talking about buildings with very few installations, and they're not very efficient. One of the things that we're seeing in integrating these measures with the energy services companies is that, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this is really a shame, it's difficult to be to not be invasive, to get rid of the problem. It's like trying to, in a 1980s car, integrate a chassis from the 21st century with 21st century technology. It's very difficult. It would be fantastic to be able to do it, but we're seeing that it's difficult. Also, it's a big advantage to make the owners understand, homeowners understand, and Carlos, we've seen how difficult that is sometimes. There might be 140 different families in a community of homeowners, and they all have to agree on investing and knowing that their home is going to operate in a different way in the future. And so what we're seeing is that a fundamental driver for this is that this forecast about improving our footprint has to be done over the medium or long term. We have to think of how to rehabilitate buildings, not by just putting a patch on them, change part of their insulation or just the windows, or changing certain heating systems and so forth. So we have to think about what we're really trying to do. What we're trying to do is to simply comply with the law, the minimums, or do we? I think that what we need to do is realize that to rehabilitate these buildings, it has to be a medium term, at least a medium term project, to be executing this at different stages, to not drive homeowners crazy, but we have to make them sustainable and decarbonize that. And by 2050, we'll be able to meet the goals, the homework that the task that they've put before us. We're supposed to have 0% emissions by 2050. Total decarbonization of our homes. As you know, Israel, in the association, we have a working group that you belong to work along these lines, looking for efficient solutions, the combination between efficiency and the different technologies for this group rehabilitating these homes. One last question for all of you. From your point of view, from your experience, and maybe you have a project, just maybe a flagship project where you've applied renewables or energy efficiency, or the combination of the two. We've been talking about optimizing management, so I would like to hear each one of you talk about maybe an emblematic or flagship project. Yes, thanks very much. We believe that in the different flagship projects that we have in these energy services, one of the most emblematic, and that we could talk about publicly because it's been in the press just recently, is the case of Quality Pascual. It's one of the food companies, most important. It's a leader in sustainability, Pascual. A very strong commitment with everything that has to do with the SDGs, and in their plant in Catalonia, in Gur, close to Peak, I was working with them for 5 years. And this is important because here, there's no quick fix. There's no magic wand. Savings are gained after a lot of work over years with very experienced specialists. In this case, we reduced by 35% the carbon footprint of the company. We've invested in all kinds of technologies, energy efficiency applied to many different vectors, compressed air, steam, air conditioning, also photovoltaic self-supply. Other technologies that we haven't mentioned here. We're going to continue to have to use some fuel until we reach carbon neutrality. So one of the ways to do it is using natural gas, which is very competitive and capture that carbon without and capture the little bit of carbon that emits into the atmosphere. And we're analyzing other projects as well with different solutions, because this project now has matured and we have better technological improvements. So with this client and others, we think that this is a project that has really, it's great to show, because we're very happy with the results. We're replicating this with other centers, centers of the Pascual Group. Juan Carlos. Well, Inigo was speaking, I was thinking about the smart city project that we have in Coruña and Lugo, where we have energy efficiency, we have renewable energy projects. But I thought of a smaller project that I'll mention now. Those of us working in retail during the pandemic, the curfew, people can't leave their homes. With the change of external lighting of our different customers, they're talking about huge savings. And this is something that we can all see. We go down the street, we see windows to attract us, but if we can't go out, then why would those lights be on? So they were turned off, and we can say that we've been documenting this. I think it's something that we can all see as an example, and I think it's valid here in Spain and any other country. Simply turn off store windows during this curfew, and that was a huge savings. Israel, very briefly. Fortunately, at world level, we're integrating a lot of renewable energy and technology. Our focus has always been on energy savings and water. We think that water has been very important. We haven't talked about water, but we also should be talking about that. That's our big focus. There are hundreds of thousands of ideas about this in Spain, many more. But just to within the city of Madrid, where we're trying to bring Europe and Latin America together, there are two examples in the city of Madrid that were executed just recently. First, one that's based on the energy symbiosis in a neighborhood in Madrid. There's a hotel that was rehabilitated 4 years ago while they were building, while another company was building its headquarters, and they were using inertia energy in the structure of the building, and both buildings then feed off of one another because one had an excess of heat. These are old hotels. It was an old hotel. And they had kind of a cleaner setup in the basement. They had too much heat, and they were able to use that excess heat. And they were sending that heat next door to the other building, because I think that was a fantastic symbiosis. So now they have no longer do they have these cooling chimneys at the hotel, and they were using that excess heat to heat the building right next door. So I think that we do have to look at energy symbiosis. Energy exists. It just becomes transformed. It's not lost. Thanks very much for all three of you. It's a pleasure. Inigo, Juan Carlos, and Israel. We've talked about many things: technology, energy policy, which we'll be talking about in the next round of talks, specific cases, and your vision and experience has been very valuable for our audience. So thanks very much. We're going to stop now for a minute, and then in our next group, we'll be talking about energy policy. Thanks very much to all four of you. We'll be back just in 3 minutes. We're just going to do a little bit of a cleanup for the COVID protocol, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. So see you soon.
Good afternoon. Let's continue with this third and last roundtable. We've talked about renewable energy in the first roundtable. In the second one, we've talked about the importance of energy efficiency and energy management, the importance of measurements. And now, in this third roundtable, we are going to talk about the meeting point that Madrid platform is between Europe and Latin America. And we are going to talk about energy policy, European energy policy, the European Green Deal, considering also the situation in Latin America and potential opportunities. Today we have with us Oliverio Álvarez, a partner at Deloitte, responsible. We have Albert, responsible for public affairs at Rockwool, and then we have Francisco Javier Herrera. So, Oliverio, let's start by you. Energy transition responds to a social need, an environmental need, an economic need. Well, first of all, Carlos, I would like to thank you on behalf of Deloitte for having the opportunity to be here today. I think that, as you said before, the Green Deal is a commitment to transform society. Next generation funds will be an accelerator of the transformation of society. There is much more to think about than the environment. This is an economic commitment, a technology commitment, a funding commitment, and the objective is to place Europe and its industries and companies and universities as the region leading the green transformation in the world. We've missed other trains in the past, perhaps the 5G train, so we cannot miss this train. We have to do things properly. And we have to consider the situation in Latin America. And I think there are many lessons learned that can be useful in order to accelerate the solution to our crisis. The commitment to decarbonization in Europe will play a key role. Latin America is lagging behind as regards the pandemic because we have more vaccines here, but I'm sure that what we do here will shed light in Latin America for their recovery plans, and they will probably be able to learn some of our lessons. Well, as Oliveiro said, I would like to thank you for this invitation, and I believe that energy efficiency is key for different purposes, for environmental purposes, for the economy, but I think we should think about other aspects. In Europe, they talk more about green transition and not about energy transition. It's a change in the energy model, in how we generate and storage energy. I think that we should also think about how we use energy, in which places we use energy. And this goes a little bit beyond what you said. We are all part of ANESE, so I'll tell you this. When you analyze a specific technology, you talk about the return period. When will the technology be cost-effective? I think that the Energy transition is essential, but we have to think that some technologies are absolutely necessary in our territory, but we also have to consider the life cycle of buildings, for example. And we have a ministry, the Ministry for Ecologic Transition. It's the Ministry for the transition, not of the transition. So, we will, of course, cover environmental needs, needs of the economy. We will have more jobs. There will be new products, new technology. But we have to consider the social aspects. This transition has to be fair and inclusive. No one should be left behind. And we also have to think about everyone. No one should lag behind. So thank you for the invitation. I think that nowadays we are all aware of the effects of climate change. So we need to adapt to the new situation, and there will be changes in the economy. We will all try to improve, of course. And there will be social changes, different types of companies, different types of jobs. We've talked about this for many years. At the beginning, we were afraid about this issue. We thought we didn't have the relevant technology to tackle climate change. Renewable energies were not so widespread. Now the technology is mature. This doesn't mean that we can solve all problems. We need innovation and development, of course. And Europe is taking the lead. Spain is acting too. I think the approach is right. And I believe we have to continue developing technology, implementing technology, and we have to continue working with the technology. We have the typical technologies in the energy sector, but we have to consider digital technologies as well, because we will have new paradigms in the whole cycle of generation, distribution, and marketing of energy. This will have an impact in employment and also in energy companies. So I think the change will be good, but it brings us hope. I think it will be good for all of us. But no one should be left behind. Thank you, Javier. We are all talking about next generation funds. This is an objective that is going to help companies and the economy to overcome the pandemic. What types of tools or mechanisms, financial mechanisms, will be used in order to get these funds? Funds can only get here through compatible funds, with funds compatible with our legislation. There will be calls for tenders, co-investment mechanisms, strategic projects for the recovery of the economy. So we have to apply the European legal framework and then national frameworks. Then we have to devise programs in order to submit projects that are effective. Projects that can accelerate collaboration between the public and the private sector. I think there are three characteristics that we have to keep in mind. First of all, how will we be able to devise big projects? Big companies have to get funds, but also SMEs and small companies and micro companies and freelancers. So it is important to have big projects with different stakeholders. We probably have many ideas in mind about how to devise these projects, and then we have to make sure that all this is cross-cutting to society. We have to consider the solvency of companies, the feasibility of some projects and mechanisms. We need the right mechanisms, transferring, for example, fiscal rights to other stakeholders, or perhaps backing should be provided, or public loans under favorable conditions. But we should also keep in mind mechanisms that allow an appropriate transfer of risks to those stakeholders that can manage risks properly. In some cases, there will be state aid. In other cases, there will be other instruments and tools. So we need instruments that comply with the national and European legal frameworks, and then we need big projects with different stakeholders, and no one should be left lagging behind. Considering access to credit and mechanisms should not be too complex, and then data has to be transferred to the appropriate stakeholders. Yes, there's not much more to say, Oliverio. European funds are for the recovery of economies. We in Spain have suffered the COVID crisis more than others. But we have to consider this fund in order to have a more dynamic economy. If we hadn't had this COVID crisis, we wouldn't be getting these funds. Other decisions would have been made by companies. So there will be investments due to the funds that come from Europe. So we have to be courageous. Mechanisms. There can be very many mechanisms. We do not have to reinvent the wheel. I think there are two interesting approaches to funds. Innovation, development, further develop current markets, complementing different strategies, new products, in order to cater to different needs. And then there are market sectors where there are no barriers, but things just don't work properly. So research and development will play a leading role. And we have to eliminate barriers. I'll give you an example. Energy rehabilitation. That's a barrier or a sector or a market that just won't start. There's never enough investment for energy rehabilitation. We always talk about overcoming barriers. But as Oliveira said, we need to devise a new program to have a more dynamic market, a better industry. We need to rehabilitate 10 times more houses. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. In Italy, they have said, we are going to have eco-bonus. You can invest, and in 5 years' time, you will have a fiscal relief. That is being creative, in my opinion, and I know it works, because our factories in Italy cannot supply the material that is being requested of them. We will talk about rehabilitation later. It's a bit too early. Well, we could talk about this for hours. Javier. There will be a lot of funds, apparently. How will we use them? We have to use them very quickly and achieve visible results. I don't know if we are used to this way of working. It's important to keep in mind that as we fulfill the objectives, technology needs are higher and higher. We have more and more technology needs and more challenges. So research and development is key. It's a basic concept, but we need to do more. I don't know if there will be enough people to handle all these instruments, current ones and future instruments. We need many teams of people to handle these funds. There have been distortions up to date. We've handled many European projects. We've always seen big initiatives taking place in Europe. We would all participate in European products. We would go to Vilnius or to other cities in Europe, but we wouldn't see the result of the projects applied in different cities. We've been involved in so many European projects at city level, at regional level, but then in many cases we haven't seen any results. And then there are differences between legal frameworks. And therefore, in Spain, we never had the opportunity to apply pilot projects from Europe, to apply in our cities certain projects. Generally speaking, in the end, many projects weren't applied in our cities because we were lacking instruments so that projects were more impactful. We are talking about recovery, transformation, and resilience. So, we need to have pilot projects in different cities with many stakeholders, as my colleague said. People have to learn, and we have to devise mechanisms so that pilot projects can be applied properly in different cities. Because in the end, in Spain, we don't conclude the process of innovation. And then the result is that we are very dependent on other people. So we do not have enough jobs and we do not create employment, etc.
Thanks, Javier. We're talking about renewable energy management, both with the previous plan. They said, or in the previous discussion, we're talking about 6.8 billion euros now, specific for energetic rehabilitation. From your point of view, from your experience, do you think this investment could really be changed into opportunities? Carlos, it's a challenge. Clearly, efficiency is key for this transformation to take place, and the next generation wants to accelerate that whole process with these European funds. The challenge is enormous because Javier and Alberto talked about these different aspects that will be key, and there's the complexity of all of this. The plan talks about different types of actions under the umbrella of rehabilitation. They talk about the exemplary role of public administrations. This is important, and I think we're going to see a boost here. So, the leadership of the public administration, I think at that part, we can do well. We also see integral urban rehabilitation. This is a big challenge. We need to package and have the rehabilitation reaching all of the neighborhoods is more complex. How are we going to be able to transfer all of this? You talked about more than 6 billion in public investment, and we want to mobilize more than 4 billion in complementary private investment in a very short period of time. Therefore, I would say that we need basically two things. We need a one-stop shop, or the most similar thing to a one-stop shop to simplify all of these processes. That would be the first major element. And then design financial mechanisms. How will we be able to meet each need and finance each need? If we do this well, the opportunity is tremendous In terms of GDP, according to the estimates in the plan, it could have an impact of more than 13 billion in GDP, and also in terms of employment, direct employment, more than 180,000 jobs. But if we were able to copy the model in other countries like Italy and Germany, we could reach 400,000 jobs. So the benefits, the social benefits are huge, the economic benefits are huge as well, and so the opportunity is relevant. So we just hope that it all happens. Let me correct something that you said. There are 5.8 billion. It's not bad. 5.8 billion is not bad at all. One of the most important things for me, and at the beginning your question was asking about renewable energies and energy efficiency and rehabilitation of buildings. We talk about these as individual things, but the important thing is that these are all complementary things. And I think one needs the other. And Europe has said in its strategy, these is a series of different strategies. It says energy efficiency first. Once we've become efficient, then we would move into renewables. It seems like we're moving in a different direction, but with these funds, Europe wants to balance these things. So I think it's important to make clear. It's an unprecedented opportunity, unprecedented, but we also must be aware, maybe you didn't ask this, but tomorrow or the next day, you'll probably talk about climate change and energy transition. And it seems like these things are divided as if they were different issues. We don't talk about how important it is to work together on these issues. So I think that's the first big mistake. And to follow up on what Oliverio said, we should talk about the tack-on effect, not just the investment. Right now we're going to use this free money that we don't have to return, but we hope that this is so successful that Spain will go into debt to get another 60 billion that will pay back over 30 years because we've created an industry in these renewable energies or whatever to have something that really mobilizes or becomes manna from heaven. One thing is very clear, that we have to be capable of energizing the market. We're specialists in not using all the funds that come to us from Europe. Maybe that's where we have to really work hard and work in this diffuse market. Focus on really using these funds. So I think it's really, we need to focus on this huge opportunity, and that industry comes from this industry. From the very beginning, the projects, the development of the projects, different companies all of the different companies that involved with all of these, all these energy savings. I think that would be the success, to create an industry. Because we're only doing about 10% of what Spain itself says we should be doing. linked with what I said at the beginning, that energy efficiency and renewables need to go hand in hand. In Europe, there's a concept called building renovation passports. I think that's the most intelligent way. It's a very intelligent measure. And we're now talking about that in terms of refurbishment. So we have to say, identify what the problems are and what we have to fix. We have to look at all of the different steps. And this is the best way to create an opportunity, even over the long term. Because it's very difficult to do refurbishment of a building all at the same time. Maybe it has to be done in steps over a 5 or 10 year period. Javier. I'm going to agree with what Albert said at the beginning, because that is our perception as well, that we participated in about 200 different projects for this type of rehabilitation, and we found that everyone has gone to their little niche, and we're forgetting not only transnationality and thinking beyond our own business, but sometimes we're even forgetting the spirit with which these funds are intended. There's a paper from the Commission that encourages that all actions do no significant harm. That has a lot to do with climate change. And there's a very easy checklist. And I've seen a bunch of MDIs that have gone before me, because this is tourism. Yeah, but the tourism doesn't have anything to do with energy efficiency. No, this is water, but that doesn't have anything to do with energy efficiency. People just don't understand, so it's a little bit scary. It's a fantastic effort by many different agents, and it's great that all of these issues are on the table. And they'll talk about this in different programs, but we must remember that this transcendence, this importance, and the two main issues, the funds, which are the digitization and energy efficiency. But there'll be other kind of disjointed projects. And that's what I'm afraid of. Another interesting issue that Albert said, maybe we'll have to focus more on specific things. We'll have to cover the whole spectrum, although we know that in Spain there's a... But remember, the market is global, and if the market is global, we have to be specialized, because if we all know how to do the same thing, then surely we'll be quite mediocre, because you can't cover everything. So maybe we need to take advantage of this to specialize, to create specialized industries in specific issues, which and use this lever to become leaders in that industry, or that part of the industry, or that responds to a certain need. So I'm not against, of course, these big projects that cover everything, that are supposed to solve everyone's problems. But let's be sensible. At the end of that exercise, we're going to find that this has to become a business, that we have to go to markets. We have to be excellent in those things that we decide to be excellent in. We can't be excellent in everything, and there are some countries that are clearly focusing on certain things, and we need to focus as well. We don't like to Maybe in the best country, yes, but the rest of Spain doesn't like to focus too much on things and take risks. It's good to focus, to become excellent in certain areas. We've run out of time. It's been a pleasure to hear you, the three speakers here, at this last roundtable discussion talking about the use of European funds and get this global and strategic vision of how and what mechanisms can be used to channel these and how to energize this sector, all the sectors. We talked about building and thank you to all three of you for your participation. It's been fun. And we talked about life cycle, inclusive transfer. We talked about manna from the sky, from the heaven. And we hope that that idea changes. We talk about the one-stop shop in terms of mechanisms. And then we also share this whole vision and challenge with companies like yours to just getting down to work. So thanks very much to all three of you. Thanks to all of the people listening to us in Latin America through streaming, and those that are here in person as well in the room. And it's been a pleasure. We hope that we have more editions of this platform and to talk about more things, because with these three panel discussions we talked about many different aspects of energy, but like Albert said, these are all complementary. At the three panels, we had different focuses, but we were really talking basically about the same. So I think that that's positive and shows that everything is interconnected. So we hope to be in future editions here with all of you. Thanks very much. Thank you very much. We also hope to have you here next year. We'd like to know more, but we know that you have more one-to-one meetings through this Madrid platform, other seminars and workshops. We're going to be back at 4 o'clock Madrid time, direct streaming for everyone. And you can follow this also on #Madrid platform. Thanks very much. See you back at 4 o'clock.